Ever wondered why tech billionaires are obsessed with AI? Not just interested, obsessed, like build underground bunkers, spend billions of dollars, claim it's humanity's last hope, kind of obsessed. Well, I've got a story that's going to make your jaw drop. Karen Hao, a former Mighty Technology Review journalist, just blew the lid off what's really happening inside these AI companies. And trust me, it's wilder than any sci-fi movie you've ever watched. We're talking about companies burning through billions of dollars, using as much energy as entire countries, and convincing some of the smartest people in the world to join what she describes as a cult. Yeah, you heard that right, a cult. But here's the kicker: what if I told you that the whole bigger is better approach to AI might be completely wrong? That while these tech giants are building massive data centers and burning through resources like there's no tomorrow, smaller companies are actually getting better results. Look, I know there's a lot of AI content out there, but this isn't another video about ChatGPT doing your homework or AI taking your job. This is about the empire being built right under our noses by people who think they're creating gods in Silicon Valley. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what Karen discovered after years of investigating these companies. And fair warning, once you see what's really going on, you can't unsee it. Stick around, because if you've ever wondered why AI companies seem to operate more like religious movements than businesses, you're about to find out exactly why, and believe me, it's not what you think. Think about the last time someone tried to sell you something by making it sound more complicated than it needed to be. That's exactly what's happening with AI right now. These companies have turned a simple term from 1956 into something that sounds almost magical. But here's what they don't want you to know: most of what we call AI today is just one small piece of a bigger puzzle. It's called deep learning. No fancy terms needed here. Imagine teaching a computer to recognize patterns by showing it millions of examples. That's it. That's the big secret. You know how you learned to recognize cats as a kid. Your parents pointed at cats and said cat, until your brain figured out what makes a cat a cat. Deep learning does the same thing, just with way more data and way more computing power. ChatGPT, it's basically playing the world's most sophisticated game of predict the next word, after reading most of the internet. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something Karen Hao discovered during her investigation. These companies aren't just selling technology, they're selling a story about artificial general intelligence machines that can think like humans. The only problem, we're nowhere near that. Not even close. Let me put this in perspective. When OpenAI or Google talk about their AI systems, they're like a chef who's mastered making the perfect omelet, claiming they're close to creating life itself. Yes, the omelet is impressive. No, it's not even remotely the same thing as creating life. And this matters because these companies are making massive decisions that affect all of us based on this story. They're building data centers the size of small cities, using up precious resources, all chasing something that might not even be possible the way they're approaching it. Here's a fact that'll blow your mind. Before companies like OpenAI started pushing these massive AI models, researchers were actually making incredible progress with tiny, efficient AI systems that could run on your phone. But that story doesn't sell as well as we're building God in a data center, does it? Think about that for a second. The entire direction of one of the most important technologies of our time might be based more on a compelling narrative than actual science. And that's just the beginning of what Karen uncovered. You know what's funny about magic tricks? Once you see how they're done, they're usually pretty simple. Well, get ready, because we're about to peek behind the curtain of AI's biggest magic trick, the true cost of making these systems work. Let's talk numbers for a second, and I promise these will make your head spin. In the next 5 years, AI companies will need to add enough energy to the global grid to power the entire United Kingdom. And then some, not a city, not a region, an entire country's worth of energy, and guess what's powering most of it? Good old-fashioned fossil fuels. But wait, it gets better. Remember that glass of water you drank this morning? AI data centers are guzzling that too. These massive facilities need endless amounts of water just to keep their computers from melting down. And here's the kicker tooth. Thirds of these new AI facilities are being built in places that are already running out of water. Now, let's talk about the human cost, because this is where Karen's investigation gets dark. Really dark. You know all those AI chatbots that seem so clean and friendly? Well, someone has to teach them what's appropriate and what isn't. OpenAI hired workers in Kenya to do this job. These people had to read through some of the most traumatic content imaginable, the kind of stuff that gives you nightmares just to make sure your chatbot stays family-friendly. Many of them are still dealing with severe psychological trauma. Or take this story about a Venezuelan refugee in Colombia. They got hired to help train self-driving cars. Sounds cool, right? Except they were paid pennies to work endless hours, labeling thousands of images until their eyes burned. Also, some tech company in Silicon Valley could claim their AI is getting smarter. Here's what blows my mind: none of this is necessary. It's not like these are the only ways to develop AI, but these companies have convinced everyone that bigger is better, that more data means more progress, that burning through resources like there's no tomorrow is the only way forward. Think about it. Every time you use ChatGPT, every time you play with an AI image generator, there's this invisible cost. Not just in electricity or water, but in human suffering. And the craziest part, the companies behind these tools are so caught up in their mission, they've convinced themselves these costs are justified. But you might be wondering, if these costs are so high, why do they keep pushing forward? Well, that leads us to perhaps the most fascinating part of Karen's investigation: the almost religious belief system driving these companies. Ever notice how some tech leaders talk about AI like they're describing a religious awakening? It's not just you. What Karen discovered is that these aren't just companies, they're more like tech cults with billion-dollar budgets. Here's something that'll make you raise an eyebrow. When you ask these companies about their business model, about how exactly they plan to make money, things get weirdly vague. Even Microsoft, one of the biggest players in the game, has started pulling back, wondering if they might have gotten a bit too excited. But here's the real kicker: these companies don't care. No, seriously. They're not in it for the money, at least not directly. They're chasing something bigger: artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Basically, they want to create human-level artificial intelligence. And they believe, and I mean really, truly believe, that whoever gets there first wins. Everything. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're in a room with some of the smartest people in tech. They're talking about AI like it's the second coming. They use phrases like the most important endeavor in human history and the last invention humanity will ever need to make. Does this sound like business talk to you, or does it sound more like something else? These leaders have managed to convince some of the brightest minds in the world that working on AI isn't just a job, it's a mission, a calling. They're not developing technology anymore. They're working on humanity's salvation. And when you believe you're saving the world, things like profit margins and business models start to seem, well, kind of irrelevant. Think about this. Some of these companies have raised billions of dollars without a clear plan for making money. Try that with any other business idea. Hey, I need a few $1 billion to build something that might change everything, but I can't tell you exactly how or when. In any other industry, you'd be laughed out of the room. But in AI, investors are throwing money at them, and this isn't just about making cool technology anymore. These companies genuinely believe they're in a race to create something akin to a digital god. A super-intelligent being that will either solve all our problems or, well, they don't like to talk about the or, but you know who really mastered this whole ideology game? A guy named Sam Altman. And what he did with OpenAI is probably one of the most fascinating stories in this whole saga. Remember when Facebook's motto was "Don't be evil"? Well, OpenAI has an even better story. Picture this: late 2015, Elon Musk and Sam Altman start a non-profit with a beautiful mission to develop AI for the benefit of humanity. No profit motives, no corporate greed, just pure altruistic research. Fast forward just 1 year. Funny thing about developing AI, it's expensive, really expensive, and suddenly this noble nonprofit starts looking an awful lot like the very companies it was supposed to be different from. But here's where it gets interesting. Enter Sam Altman, and according to Karen's investigation, this guy is playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. See, Altman isn't just a tech CEO. He's what you'd get if you combined a Silicon Valley visionary with a master psychologist. Think about this. How do you convince the world's top AI researchers to work for you when Google and Facebook are offering them millions? Simple, you give them something money can't buy, a mission. Altman didn't just build a company, he created a movement. He understood something crucial: brilliant people don't just want high salaries, they want to believe they're changing the world. Here's a perfect example. When OpenAI switched from non-profit to for-profit, you'd expect an exodus, right? But almost everyone stayed. Why? Because Altman had mastered the art of making people believe in the dream. The profit motive wasn't a betrayal of the mission, it was necessary for the mission. And let's talk about his real superpower, network building. While other tech CEOs were focused on building products, Altman was building relationships. Government officials, other CEO, academics, he created this web of influence that made OpenAI seem not just important, but inevitable. Here's what Karen discovered that really blew my mind. Altman doesn't just understand technology, he understands human nature. He knows exactly how to tap into our hopes, our fears, our desires for meaning. When he talks about AI, he's not selling software, he's selling salvation. But here's the thing that should make us all pause for a moment. When one person gets this good at convincing everyone they're right, when they can make even the smartest people in the room believe anything, well, that's when we should start asking some serious questions. Because this isn't just about one company anymore. This transformation from non-profit to power player has implications for all of us, and that leads us to perhaps the most concerning part of this whole story, what this means for democracy. You know what's scarier than AI becoming too powerful? The fact that a handful of people get to decide how powerful it becomes. Think about that for a second. We're not talking about governments or elected officials here. We're talking about a small group of tech executives in Silicon Valley making decisions that could affect, well, everyone. Here's something that'll keep you up at night. These AI companies aren't just building products anymore, they're building what Karen calls empire, building assets. And they're doing it with the full support of the U.S. government. Why? Because whoever controls AI might just control the future. Let me break this down with a simple example. When OpenAI releases a new model, it affects how millions of people work, create, and think. No votes, no public debate. Just a small group of people in a room somewhere in San Francisco deciding what's best for the rest of us. But here's where it gets really wild. Some folks in Silicon Valley have actually started dismissing democracy altogether. They call it the politics of exit. Basically, they think traditional democratic processes are too slow, too messy for the AI age, and their solution, let the tech elite make the decisions instead. Think I'm exaggerating. During her investigation, Karen uncovered conversations where tech leaders openly discussed creating their own cities, their own rules, their own systems of governance, all centered around AI development. They're not even hiding it anymore. Remember when Mark Zuckerberg said, "Move fast and break things"? Well, these companies are moving fast and might break democracy itself. They're making decisions about data privacy, about content moderation, about who gets access to what technology decisions that affect billions of people with virtually no oversight. And here's the part that really gets me. They genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. They've convinced themselves that centralizing this much power in the hands of a few tech companies is necessary for humanity's survival. It's not greed driving this train, it's absolute conviction. But you might be wondering, does AI development really need to be this centralized? Do we really need these massive companies controlling everything? Well, that's where this story takes an unexpected turn, because it turns out there might be a completely different way to develop AI. Remember when phones were the size of bricks because everyone thought bigger meant better? Well, the AI industry is having its brick phone moment right now. These massive companies have convinced everyone that you need data centers the size of cities to build good AI. But here's the thing, they might be completely wrong. Let me share something fascinating that Karen uncovered. Before OpenAI started this arms race of bigger and bigger models, AI research was actually heading in the opposite direction. Scientists were developing what they called tiny AI systems as smart, efficient programs that could run on your phone without needing a supercomputer in the cloud. Here's a real-world example that'll blow your mind. A Chinese company called DeepSeek built an AI model that performs just as well as the big players, but uses way less computing power. It's like they found a way to build a sports car that goes just as fast but uses a fraction of the fuel. Or take Stable Diffusion, that AI art generator everyone's talking about. They proved you don't need OpenAI massive resources to create amazing AI. They built their system to be lean and efficient, and guess what? It works just as well as the resource. Hungry alternatives. But here's the million-dollar question. If smaller, more efficient systems are possible, why are companies building these massive AI factories? Karen's investigation suggests something pretty interesting. It's not about technology at all. It's about control. Think about it this way. If you convince everyone that building good AI requires billions of dollars and massive data centers, you've just created a very exclusive club. Only the biggest companies with the deepest pockets can play. Convenient, right? The truth is, this bigger is better approach isn't just unnecessary, it might actually be holding us back. While these companies are busy building their AI cathedrals, they're burning through resources we can't afford to waste, ignoring solutions that could make it more accessible to everyone. And you want to know the real kicker? Some of the most impressive breakthroughs in AI aren't coming from these massive systems at all. They're coming from clever researchers who found ways to do more with less. It's not about how much computing power you have, it's about how smartly you use it. But if all of this is true, if there really are better ways to develop AI, what can we actually do about it? Well, that's where this story gets interesting, because Karen discovered there's actually a lot we can do. So here we are. You might be thinking, great, another tech story that leaves me feeling powerless. But that's where this story is different, because according to Karen's investigation, we're actually at a turning point, and you have way more power than you think. Here's the thing these AI companies don't want you to realize. Their entire empire is built on our data, our resources, our communities, and that means we have leverage, real leverage, not just as consumers, but as citizens. Let me break down what's already happening. Artists and writers are taking AI companies to court over using their work without permission, and they're winning. Communities are successfully blocking data centers from being built in their water-scarce region. Teachers and educators are demanding a say in how AI is used in schools. But here's what makes this really powerful. It's not just isolated incidents. Each of these actions is like pulling a thread in the AI company's carefully woven narrative. When enough people pull enough threads, the whole thing starts to unravel. Think about it this way. Every time you exercise your data privacy rights, every time you question why an AI company needs to use so much water in your community, every time you support smaller, more efficient AI projects, you're helping shape what AI becomes. Karen discovered something fascinating. These companies are actually vulnerable to public pressure. Remember when OpenAI had to address the concerns about their Kenyan content moderators? That happened because people spoke up. When enough voices join together, even the most powerful tech companies have to listen. But here's the most important part: we don't have to wait for some perfect moment to act. The future of AI isn't set in stone. It's being written right now, and we all have a chance to be part of that story. You don't need to be a tech expert. You don't need to understand deep learning or neural networks. You just need to realize that these companies' power isn't absolute, it's borrowed. Borrowed from our data, our communities, our resources, and our trust. So here's my question to you. Now that you know what's really happening behind the scenes, what are you going to do about it? Because the next chapter in this story isn't going to be written by tech billionaires in Silicon Valley. It's going to be written by people like you and me who decide enough is enough. The choice is ours. We can let AI development continue as this religious conquest by a handful of companies, or we can push for something better, something more democratic, more efficient, and more accountable to all of us.